I can see this chunk you got right there.
You look out there, it makes sense, and you know when it makes sense. And when you're kind of going against the grain.
People are becoming a lot more aware, and it's become a kind of marketing tool to describe their buildings as environmental. I never really set out on this path to do this stuff. All the things that nature kind of gives you, it's just free. It's accomplished through good design. It was just like a complete seismic shift in the way people should think about architecture. It's so important that the people designing buildings are involved in budgeting buildings and all the aspects of construction because they're all so intertwined. That's how buildings were built for thousands of years. There was a time when all of a sudden everything became fragmented, where you have a designer of a building, you have an engineer of a building, you have a mechanical, everything became completely fragmented because they're all specialists. But the specialists all worked in different rooms and different buildings and passed their work on to each other. So there's a disconnect all the time. Everybody was just compensating for the last person's inefficiencies. We could have a glass box that the sun came in on every angle because we could just pump cooling into the building. With the development model, what was happening so often is that developers build buildings only looking at the cost and then what they're going to get for it. And no one ever thought about operating costs. You need to get all of those people with all the specific knowledge and sit down at a table and discuss all these things. So you're not really compensating for each other. You're kind of going, okay, if we do this, if we do that, then things are going to be more efficient.
I don't know. I'm leaning to steel with the T-Jet.
So you're trying to take all the different components of what goes into the building and wrap them into more of a sphere rather than a line.
Keeps all the bugs out, too.
We got interested in the mini home, realizing that you really don't need that much. We were looking for an alternative for people who wanted to live with much less, and but with the same quality. Still all the same things we're typically doing, like very tight, efficient building envelopes, high quality, no VOC materials. Because its footprint is so much smaller, it requires incredibly less energy to operate. It's only 450 square feet. Our goal long-term is just to develop more what we're calling eco-parks with them, where it'll be a collection of mini homes in a natural setting that will share some communal spaces, much more in tune with nature.
When you have projects where they're actually looking beyond the completion of construction, then you start to understand that a building is not just a static thing. Then it has a lifetime of 100 years. which the cost of operating that building is immensely greater than what it costs to initially build it. Buildings account for the vast majority of our energy consumption, whether it's construction or use. It's like buildings, number one, and then transportation. So we're still very far behind where we could be in terms of conservation. I look back a lot at historical precedents of how people made buildings work without the need of all these additional systems. Nature always knows the best way. And we only waste our intelligence trying to combat that, because you'll never win.
I'll be the first one to say that the world needs to live in dense cities. Because you just consume so much less energy and resources when you live in densely populated areas.
We don't have that golden era of romancing future anymore. We're just worrying about today. We can just keep ballooning out from cities without thinking about the consequences of it. We can keep consuming natural resources, keep selling them to the rest of the world to pay for our insanely high standard of living.
Since we were in school, my partners and I started talking about sustainability. We started to put a lot of thought into the passive stuff when we first started doing our buildings. And at that time, people were a little freaked out about the science of it and mainly the expense of it. Now it's become pretty fashionable, so people are happy to talk about it and they want to integrate as much stuff as possible. It gives you a place to start from. So with this building, we were very careful to properly design the solar geometry of the building. And you can see that we're getting roughly about a foot of sun penetration right now. This increases to about half of the room, I think at least half of the room during the winter when the sun angle dips. We have 6-inch thick concrete floors acting as a solar mass.
The bottom line is that the design, first and foremost, takes advantage of all the natural systems.
This building is heated by a geothermal heat pump. What you can see here, it's a closed loop system, we've run this down into the lake. The temperature at the bottom of the lake is a standard, I believe it's about 50 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. So that low-grade heat comes in, the heat pump compresses the heat to bring it up to, I believe it's about 105 Fahrenheit, and then it runs through into the hydronic system, which is all the in-floor radiant hydronics. So you see we've got 5 different zones here.
People think that modern architecture is aesthetically driven, but it's purely functionally driven, and then you add a layer to it to give it whatever people want.
We create a central void through the building, so that ends up being a 2-story space. So basically what this does is it drives a stack ventilation effect through the building. In terms of the natural cooling of the building, we have the large lift and slides down there, which open up towards the lake. And then up here in the top of the curtain wall, we have a bunch of awning windows. You want to open them up to draw the cooler air off the lake and vent the hot air out through the top of the building. Cool it down during the night and then close it back up during the day. So there's no artificial cooling method needed whatsoever. It's a very special place that your family all comes together. And it passes through generations and generations.
I understand that a sustainable planet is a very dense one, but people are always going to build in these places, and so you try to do it as delicately as possible. If I can do something in one of these areas that's very, very minimal impact, then I think that that's successful.
This project does allow us to explore a lot of this technology.
Do anything to it, yeah. I saw them in Vancouver. They have a lot of green roofs.
Yeah.
I didn't really know how it worked, but they're good. Excellent.
Yeah, it really is. Try to probably keep it the edge.
Our philosophy is you just become completely accustomed to the landscape. Then once you know the landscape, then you think about the building. And you think about the people you're doing it for, and you massage it all together, and it just sort of tells its own story.
This stuff here down here, a little bit more grainy, eh?
People have lived here for 30,000 years, and the fact that there's not a lot of sign of them says a lot about how they lived on the land.
Like I was explaining before, there's like some sort of weird chemical reaction that happens when you pile snow like this. Causes it to harden. You always try to get the door lower so you don't get the cold air rising up inside. Like you try to have it so the entrance is like that, and then the platform's up here. See, we're on kind of a slope, so it's best if we come down here. Plus, that's northwest right there, right? So where the nasty wind comes from that side.
The first night we spent the night in this thing, and the weather dipped. It went down to minus 39. We found out when we got out, and we didn't even realize how cold it was outside or if it was storming unless we poked our head out to see the snow going like horizontally.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Gonna be our lights, your light system. And then, so apparently this has a capacity of a 50-watt light bulb. So we'll put one in each side. You still have all the work left of carving it out. And that's actually the hard part. Crazy. The wind can be howling out there like madness. You just stay nice and comfy.
You can see all their stops there. Yeah. Sticks.
But it's pretty cool because we don't ever make anything that's like subtractive like this. Everything we do is additive, right? You're building it from the ground up, layer by layer by layer by layer. So this is pretty cool. Really teaches you to understand like how you can exist within nature rather than against it, right? And that's kind of what happened. That's what I was mentioning before in terms of like, that's what happened with buildings for a long time. Is like we can overcome anything just by pumping it with technology and all this sort of stuff, right? Compensating for bad design, right? So then you look at something like this and it's like the perfect design for what's available. Right? Like a dome is perfect shape for being economical in terms of size. Structurally, it's perfect. It works perfect for the way you build it. Like everything about it is just so, you know. So you take that on that kind of root level and then you just try to apply it to other things. Yeah.
You really can live within nature. All the things that nature kind of gives you, you don't need to pay for it.
It's like the perfect design.
That was completely lost for a while. I think it's coming back. I don't think we place enough value on the effect the built environment has on our human condition. It's good for people to have natural air to breathe, ventilation, natural light to make people more comfortable and more productive. People are finally getting it, and that's one of the reasons why we're successful at what we do.
We're building a earth-bermed, green-roofed, environmentally friendly home here. There was a really interesting sort of dip in the property, and we could tell it was a nice gradual slope. And the fact is, in sort of a meadowy landscape, right away, it's just sort of made us think of having the building kind of basically grow out of the ground. So we started perceiving it as basically taking the existing slope and starting to lift it up to form roof planes and carving into the hill to create the building. At this point now, we have the general concept pretty much solidified, and it's just going to be about massaging parts of it, and then we'll get into construction drawings.
we saw what the dilemma was within the industry and realized how marginalized that architects had been from the whole process.
Well, I don't know. We got to come up with a game. We got to get these.
We wanted to be involved in all phases of it. It wasn't that long ago when architects were listened to.
To a bit more of a peak.
We're trying to regain that, I guess, in a way, on whatever scale we're doing it, smaller scale, but it's working. They're integrated into the landscape. If you understand it's supposed to be in sync with the environment that it's in, then maybe people can get a little more connection to their sense of place.